You know what? When I was about to start chinking the house, I was looking for videos, and people were so aware of how boring videos can be. They took so many shortcuts that I didn't find it that useful. So here's a video on chinking with no shortcuts. And yeah, it might be a little boring, but here we go. Right, first thing, as everybody tells you, cut the wire. Right, and my snips are no good, so maybe I won't be using these snips to cut this wire. So almost useful, but not right yet. Try it in there. Yep, that'll work. So, first thing you do, get it in at the bottom. Fancy staples. I tend to get 2 or 3 in just to hold it, then trim it. So I'm stapling it close to the end, maybe half an inch back. Alright, now I'm going to try and snip this to be useful. I have a little bit of a cut off there. See, this is the bit that people miss, because guess what? It's no fun. Especially no fun with snips that don't work. So I'm cutting it very slightly too big. So that when I push it back in, it'll curve just a little and still have a little bit of upward pressure to stab into the wood above. I'm pulling upwards as I cut, and I'm pulling the wire away from the bottom log, which I don't want. Alright, so just a little bit too big. I'm gonna get the bottom finished, pushing it backwards, letting it roll just a little. You don't need these too often. Every 6 inches or so is perfectly okay. But you do want to catch a complete loop of the metal. Otherwise you're just feeding in a staple for no good reason. It doesn't hold anything. Alright, so with that done, I'm now going to push it in with the head of the hammer, folding it back, because the mud is going to be recessed at the top by about an inch. That went in too far. I'll bring it back just a little. flush at the bottom, about an inch back at the top. So staples are a little hard to use upside down, and I don't have any finished nails, but any kind of nail is good. Make sure it goes into a complete loop. And put them in about every 6 inches. See how much easier it is to use nails than staples upside down. It's not that hard to do staples on the bottom. It is hard upside down. Alright. Cave that wire back into that little notch a little bit. Alright, so that's so far so good, but as you'll see, the wire is not all the way along, so I'm going to cut another piece. See how I'm not measuring it, because you want to trim it, and no matter how hard you try it, you should not get it right from a measurement. My snips are driving me a little berserk. Need a bit of an overlap, just an inch or so. Just like before, shove it in, get it down at the bottom. Half an inch back is fine. Tough. Need to trim some off that. Yeah, this is a 40-foot long by 18-foot wide house, and we've chinked the outside, finished all that, haven't started the inside yet. So cave it back in, head of my hammer, and then regular nails in a good loop, about an inch back. Don't knock them all the way in. I actually leave the head sticking out a little bit, because the mud, of course, adheres to the head of the nail. Anything that holds the cement is a good idea. Notice I'm hitting a few soft spots. Alright, enough of that. I'm going to do the second one without the video on, just to save a little bit of time. But that's exactly how you do the wire. So let me do the second one and then come back with the mud. Well, small change in plan, because you could not see the bottom on my last one, and you could not see a weird place to have to work with either, and this has got both. So I'm going to use this piece where it's a little too big, so that makes life a bit easier, and then I've got this weird knot over here that I've got to work around. See, there are some little subtle issues. One is, it is useful if the wire is bending away from you, because staples got 2 points, and one is a little bit longer than the other, and it is useful if you can actually get them both started so that they go in. See, this log takes a dip, so I've got to bend the wire down. One of the reasons why the top's not trimmed is because you do have to adjust the bottom, whether you want to adjust it or not. It adjusts itself as you're putting the staples in. You know, it bends itself downwards. I don't know why there aren't any videos that show the full process, other than the people that have been shooting them. You like me, think that, well, if you don't want to see that, it's boring. But sometimes, if you don't see it, you don't know what the heck to do about it. So the top's caved in, caved backwards, I mean. Wires in. Head of the nails catching the wire, holding it back, and then when the mud is applied, the whole thing will become a solid lump. So I'm gonna put this piece in, and then I'm gonna take a break from the video while I do the two in the other doorway. That way I get to mix just one larger batch of mud. But I will continue the video around this lump over here. I might move the camera so you can see what I'm talking about, because it's quite a nasty little lump. Angle it down a little. So it's similar to what you do by trimming the top. And it's useful to work from one end over, making sure that it's good and solid. I know you're going to get the back of my head, nothing more than that probably, some of the time. But I want to get this at the right position because I have to pull it downwards into this hollow. The wire will move as you hit the staple in, and then I gotta go up and over. You don't have to be too precise because the wire bends, right? So you pick your spot and you let the staple drag the wire in and down. A little too long. Try and get one of the legs of the staple in through the loop. Right. Now, although I said don't try and cut it perfectly, this one just accidentally is perfect. And it happens. Accidents like that are good. The reason these logs sound so soft, they're not rotten, but they are poplar. And we have a bunch of spare oak, spare chestnut and poplar, and the vast majority of the logs in this house are oak and chestnut. We've got one or two poplar. But what I find about poplar is it's so much easier to work and it's a lot lighter, and typically it's a better match if you pick a log that's the right sort of color, but these have not been cleaned and they'll look good when they are cleaned up with a good water with a little bit of soap and a little bit of bleach. Alright, so that's the one window done. I'm going to go do the other window and then mix a bunch of mud and then come back again. So the mixture that I use for mortar is 2.5 to 1. 2.5 of sand, 1 of type S cement. The cement looks grey, but it is in fact brown. The brown colour here in fact is mostly because of the sand. In terms of moisture and thickness, I will mix it until it is feeling right, and mostly I determine right or wrong based on whether you can hold a peak in the mortar after making a peak with the trowel. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is already going the color of the mortar. The S type mortar is what's called straw. The S stands for straw, meaning it's supposed to be a light brown, which if you mixed it with white sand, it would be. You mix it with brown sand and then it's a little bit browner. So this is about right. So if when you mix it, it holds a peak, that's still a little bit wet, but there's enough dryness in the bottom. Plus, after a few minutes, it starts to dry up. So I actually like that. It's a scotch too wet. So I'm going to add a little bit more cement. You don't have to add much to make a big difference in moisture content. Adding sand, particularly if the sand is already moist, is pointless. You can add a whole shovel full of sand and it makes no difference. Yeah, this is too wet. So a little bit more cement. Yeah, I like that. But we'll find out if I like it or not. So one thing that I talked about on the last row of putting the wire in was the nails at the top and the staples at the bottom. On this one, the gaps were wide enough and the curvature of the top and bottom of the logs was sufficient to easily put staples at the top as well as the bottom, which is by far the preferred approach for me, but typically you can't do it. So let's get this chinked, or at least get the first application in. Don't like this trowel. The trowel I do like is where I was last using it, in Jonesboro. But it's good enough. In my haste, I have for sure mixed this cement way too sloppy. So I'm going to have to add a little more. A little more cement. Better. So I'm actually going to leave this one to set just a scotch. Before I then put another course on it. I might put a little bit more in the middle. And come back to it. It's a cool, wet day, so it's not going to dry as fast as I would like. what I'll do is put this on and then go away and do the other one on the other side, and then come back to this after it has just set up a little tiny bit. I haven't seen anybody else do it like this, but I have found that you just get a much better finish and much less chance of it peeling away from the top log if you do the bottom and let it set just a little bit before you then do another coat. So I'm going to go do that and then come back to this in about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Well, today is a miserable day for drying cement, but it's dry enough, I think, to put the second coat on. I'm going to have to leave this for probably an hour before I do the final. Maybe not. I'll see how it goes, because I have to roll it right up at the top and I don't want it falling off, which it does. Getting the cement just right is really important. I'm definitely going to have to put a third course on. Before I do that, give this more time. I think that first mix was a little wet, plus it's a cold, miserable day, and it's not drying very well. So this is just a rough coat, as you might call it, to get the base in place. Yeah, and I'll do one more. I'm not going to try and get enough at the top there. If I do, it's going to roll back on me. But it is nice to bring it up so it's touching at least. And it'll just be a very small third coat. I could almost do it now, but if you got the time, and it's not good to hurry it and have it all peel off, else you gotta do it all again. One of the tricks is to stop messing with it. Right, get it right, or as right as it needs to be, and then leave it alone. See, it's coming away from the mesh right there, and if I push down here, it peels back even further. So I've got to leave that. The more you mess around with the bottom of it, the more the top peels back. So I think, even though it looks a little rough, I am going to leave that for about an hour and then come back and just do the last bit. I do have a rather large mix, which is a little disappointing to throw it all away, but it's only sand. It's only sand and cement. Throwing away $1 for the sake of having to completely redo what I spent good time doing. Now if these gaps were smaller, you can for sure do it in one coat. If it was a hot day today, I could for sure do it in one coat. But not this one. So I really do have to leave that now and come back to it. If I do more, like I'm going to now, if I do more, it will slump on me. So I guess I'm about to show you what slumping on me means. There you go. You can't see that maybe, but that just peeled right back from the top. And it's going to do it again. So I had to take off some volume there. Ah, see, messing with it. Messing with it, messing with it. Give it a little bit of a push at the top. Get it into the mesh. And if you rewound this video and watched how far I had got before I messed with it, you would have seen that I would have done that bit. So the trick is, don't mess with it. I am wondering if the other side that I've done could take a little bit more. I think I'll go back and check that. But whether it will or not, this needs to sit and set for at least half an hour. Well, it's about an hour later. I've got a mix that is now a little stiffer than I like. Just to do this final little bit. And I do not like this trowel because it doesn't have a corner on it. So when you have a corner to do, you can't get up into the corner. So you end up messing around. Like that. So the last course is just about dry enough, which means I can finish this. Lump of mortar. So cement. Alright, so this is now blend it in. Right, smooth it out. And then ready for the last pull top. Not enough there. Not enough. Alright, that is it. The reason I'm messing around here is I keep hitting a nail. The last course was not dry enough because it is doing what I hate, which is peeling back, and it's not allowing me to work it the way I want it. Do not get that problem on a hot day. But I think I'll be able to get it done. Blend it in, trail it over like you never did 2 coats, 3 coats. Push it in nice and tight at the top. So it doesn't shrink back on you. Blend it in, smooth it out, and then one last little pull at the top to push it in nice and tight up against the log. And then of course that made another ridge that now I have to smooth out. And then it falls back again. It's really a matter of iterative steps. Alright, that's good. that is it. Alright, so all done. What used to be a doorway is now a window. The logs are in, chinking is finished. That was the side that I was videotaping earlier. This is the other side. So we're all done. The chinking, of course, is much darker because it's wet, and it will dry and it will match the rest of the house. So no doubt visible when I put the window in. But that's finished, and this one over here is finished too. Just has to dry out and it will be beautiful. End of the day, dam is saved, chinking's finished, window holes are finished. Tomorrow something new.